Two people can look at the same thing and see something completely different. Same thing, two people having different visions, different interpretations of the vision, and also different behavioral responses based upon their interpretations of what they are seeing. Now, there are some individuals who looked at this thing that you see on the screen, and somehow they saw what they interpreted as a crown, and therefore that's what they named it, basically a crown. Now, most people don't look at this and see a crown. They see something that looks somewhat like a ball, some sort of spherical something with some things protruding out of it. We are going to do an activity based upon visual perception, and we are going to see, is there any way in which someone could see a crown in relation to what you see on the screen. These are some additional depictions of the crown microbe. And as you can see, even when looking at these different depictions, you still don't see anything that looks like a standard crown. Now, what we are going to do is a little activity that sort of resembles matrix reasoning. And so we're going to look at how you might organize and interpret this visual field information to come away with this idea of a crown. Now, again, this takes quite a bit of mental gymnastics to come up with this, but this is still a very good activity in terms of changing vantage points and looking at things from different perspectives to see if you see something different. We're going to call this activity the Game of Thrones. What you will see is when you are looking at a certain type of crown, if you play around with the visual field, you can come away with a picture that looks substantially similar to some of the depictions that you just saw. So in this depiction, you have an eagle with two heads and two crowns on the two heads. And this is an interesting looking crown on the eagle's head. It's a crown that sort of looks a little bit like a beehive in some instances, but it's very rounded, almost like basically a half circle. And you can see that more clearly here. So you see that idea of a beehive or what might be a half circle. And so in many instances, these are very unique crowns. Clearly, most people still do not see that ball with those things protruding out of it. But what we're going to do is we're going to do an activity related to the psychology of visual perceptual skills. And so when you are looking at visual perceptual skills, what you are looking at is this ability to connect the dots. And so you see this in doing mazes, in doing pattern detection, matching, sorting, sort of these pictorial anagrams. When you look at words and you can scramble them up and come up with all of the different words that come out of that. You can do that also with pictures, and all sorts of things will come out of the pictures. And so you can see hidden pictures. That's also a part of visual perceptual skills. And so we are going to see if there is any way that this particular crown looks like what we saw in the earlier depictions of the microbe that is named a crown. In this instance, if you take those two crowns and you put them together, one on the top and then one on the bottom, this is basically what you have. And when you look at it from that perspective, you can see that this looks more similar to the depiction of the microbe with the protrusions coming out of it all around the edges there. And here, when you combine those crowns, those two halves, you do have something that looks substantially similar to the picture. And so you see the crowns combined on one side of this microbe, and then you see the crowns combined on the other side, and they are simply flipped upside down. So you see the depictions with these combined crowns in two different ways there. So you get these alternative vantage points, but here you see that there is something much more substantially similar to what looks like this microbe. But the only way that you get it is by actually flipping these crowns around and then combining the crowns. And so those two half circles, making them into one circle. This is still the same crowns. They are simply combined. And here you see another depiction, another vantage point of these merged crowns. And another vantage point of the merged crowns. A similar vantage point of the merged crowns. And another vantage point of the merged crowns. And again, you can see where this has those protrusions that look substantially similar to the original depiction. And now we're going to look at the flip side of this. This is the same depiction that we were just looking at. This is simply flipped upside down. And so it's the same thing. It's just, again, another vantage point. And so this definitely looks more like the original depiction of the microbe, or the microbe looks more like this. And so in this instance, you have something that looks like the microbe, and the microbe then, when you have this kind of depiction or this vantage point, you have something that looks like a crown. And this is just another vantage point of the crowns flipped upside down. Now this really takes a lot of skill in order to envision this without actually flipping things upside down. There are some children, however, and some adults that can actually visually flip things, and so they can see things from a different vantage point without even flipping things upside down. They can actually just visually do the flipping and see something different. When individuals have a significant imagination, they can do these things. This is why some children are very skilled at playing chess, because they have significant imagination. And when people don't have significant imagination, then the game of chess becomes very difficult because they have a failure of imagination, and chess requires quite a bit of imagination. And so these types of activities where you are teaching people or teaching children how to visually flip things and visually see things from different vantage points, this will create quite a bit of skill with respect to visual perception, visual motor skills. So there are a number of dynamics that go along with this, and so it's not just looking at pictures and playing games with pictures or playing games with puzzles. And you might want to start thinking about what types of career fields require the ability to see things from different vantage points, to be able to orchestrate things in such a way that you can flip things in your mind and see things in different ways, interpret things in different ways. And this is just another image flipped upside down again with respect to those merged crowns from the eagle's heads. Now, as we wrap this activity up, clearly it is very difficult to come up with the idea that this thing looks anything like a crown. However, that is how it has been labeled. But what you can see is that it depends on how a person is envisioning a crown. And so if a person is envisioning the crown that's on top of the eagle's heads, it is possible that you can see things in that type of crown that might substantially resemble this thing that has been named a crown. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care. See you soon.